The final execution bell. Within the thick walls of Ravenshollow Penitentiary, on that cold December night in 1987, the final execution was carried out. Vincent "Bloody" Moreau had been found guilty of brutally murdering 7 children and sentenced to the electric chair. Guard Samuel Crawford, as he closed the execution chamber door that night, would never forget Moreau's last words. "This prison is not my grave," Moreau had said, with a strange gleam in his eyes. "This will be my home, and every 13th of the month I will remind you." Crawford had dismissed these words that night as the final throes of a madman. He would realize how wrong he was far too late. Something strange had happened during the execution. The electric chair's bell system had malfunctioned and began ringing just as Moreau drew his last breath. The technicians couldn't silence the bell. It was as if the bell had synchronized with Moreau's heartbeat. When the power was finally cut and restored, the bell fell silent. But Crawford felt that sound would never leave his ears. January 13th, 1988. At 12:07 a.m., a sharp bell sound from the execution chamber awakened the entire prison. Guard Crawford was patrolling the corridor when he heard that metallic sound echoing. His heart was pounding in his chest, his steps slowing. This sound was familiar, very familiar. The execution chamber door was open. This was impossible. The door was always locked and only Deputy Warden Gerald Brennan had the key. Crawford approached the electric chair with trembling hands. The chair was empty, but warm, as if someone had just been sitting there and had gotten up. Even more frightening was that the chair's leather straps were still damp. He couldn't tell if it was sweat or something else. The bell rang again, this time longer, more agonizing. A voice echoed in Crawford's head. "Someone must die." The voice was so clear and close that Crawford looked around, but there was no one there, only that cursed chair and the dark shadow above it. The next morning, Deputy Warden Brennan being found dead in his cell was seen as mere coincidence. He had suffered a heart attack. No one connected it to the bell sound, but Crawford had found a small note beside Brennan's body. "The bell is ringing. Someone must come." February 13th, 1988. Again at midnight, again that cursed bell. This time, guard Kevin Martinez didn't dare enter the execution chamber. He stood at the door, hearing strange sounds from within, as if someone was sitting in the electric chair, breathing in and out. Deep, rattling breaths. Sometimes coughing sounds came too. "Moreau," Martinez whispered. "Is that you?" The bell suddenly stopped. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps. The steps of someone rising from the chair. Martinez began to run, but the footsteps behind him also quickened. As he ran down the corridor, he was afraid to look back. When he stopped, breathless, the sounds following him also stopped. But there was a strange smell in the air, the smell of burnt flesh, that horrible smell that comes during electrocution. The next morning, Martinez's body was found in the corridor. His face was frozen in horror, his eyes wide with fear. But the strangest thing was that his body showed signs of electrocution. No doctor could explain how this was possible. Crawford now knew that something was very wrong. But worse still, where Martinez's body was found, there were small footprints, bare footprints, Moreau's footprints. In March 1988, the prison's new warden, Dr. Catherine Reynolds, began investigating these strange deaths. While examining old records, she discovered a peculiar detail about Moreau's execution. The electric chair's bell system had malfunctioned during the execution and continued ringing. But even more interesting were Moreau's last words. Not just the words Crawford had heard, but other things he had said. "I will return every 13th of the month," he had said, "and I will take someone with me." These words weren't in the official records. Crawford had secretly written them down and kept them in his file. It's as if the chair trapped his soul inside, Reynolds thought. When she consulted Crawford, The old guard tremblingly recounted the events. "Doctor, when that bell rings, someone dies. And if no one dies..." Crawford couldn't finish his sentence. There was deep fear in his eyes. "If no one dies, what happens?" Reynolds asked. "Moreau gets angry, and then he kills everyone." Reynolds thought this was nonsense, but an incident from last month made her think. When the bell rang on February 13th, no one had died except Martinez. But that night, all the inmates in the prison's D block said they had the same nightmares. They had all seen Moreau. They had all heard his voice. On the night of March 13th, Reynolds decided to keep watch in the execution chamber. When the bell rang at 12:07 a.m., she was ready. But what she saw destroyed all her courage. Vincent Moreau was sitting in the electric chair. His body was semi-transparent, his eyes glowing red. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. Then that voice echoed in Reynolds' head. "Someone must die, or the prison itself dies." Reynolds was afraid to blink. Moreau's ghost slowly stood up and began walking toward her. His hands were trembling, as if electrocuted. Small electric sparks were coming from his fingertips. Reynolds backed away, but the door suddenly closed. Moreau's voice echoed in her head again. "You understand, don't you, Doctor? One life every 13th of the month, or the entire prison dies." Reynolds' breath caught. Cracks began appearing on the walls. Dust was falling from the ceiling. Moreau came closer. "Look around you," he said. "The prison is sick. You need to feed me." Reynolds looked around. Indeed, the walls looked pale, as if life energy had been drained from them. "Why you?" Reynolds asked. Moreau smiled. "Because I am part of this place. My blood has mixed with these walls. My soul is bound to these iron bars. This prison is my body, and I am its soul." Reynolds understood. Moreau wasn't just a ghost. He was now the prison itself. April 13th, 1988. Reynolds prepared to sacrifice herself. But that night when the bell rang, someone else was in the execution chamber. Old guard Crawford had voluntarily sat in the electric chair. "Someone must die," Crawford whispered, "and it will be me. Too many people have died already." The bell stopped. Moreau's shadow slowly disappeared. But Crawford's body was found in the chair in the morning. Reynolds noticed something that day. The cracks in the prison walls had disappeared. It was as if the building was breathing. The corridors looked brighter. Moreau had been fed and strengthened. But Reynolds discovered something more horrifying. After Crawford's death, the prison's electrical system began working more efficiently. It was as if Moreau's soul had integrated into the electrical system. The lights burned brighter. The cameras gave clearer images. Moreau could see everywhere in the prison. He could hear from everywhere. He was no longer just in the execution chamber, but everywhere. Years passed. The same thing repeated every 13th of the month. Sometimes guards, sometimes inmates, sometimes visitors. Moreau's soul chose someone each time. Dr. Reynolds tried to close the prison, but no authority believed her. Ravenshollow Penitentiary remained open, and the cursed cycle continued. Reynolds began staying at the prison every 13th of the month. She tried to predict who Moreau would choose in advance. Sometimes she succeeded. She would get the chosen person out of the prison at the last moment. But Moreau didn't like this. On nights when Reynolds disrupted his plan, the prison's entire electrical system would go crazy. Lights would flicker, cameras would show static images. Moreau's anger could be felt everywhere. In 1995, young journalist Thomas Parker came to investigate these events. Reynolds told him all the truths. "The electric chair needs to be destroyed," Parker said. "We tried," Reynolds replied, "but Moreau became part of it. If the chair is destroyed, his soul will spread throughout the entire prison. At least now he's only active on the 13th of the month. If the chair is destroyed, he'll be active every day." June 13th, 1995. Parker was waiting in the execution chamber. When the bell rang at 12:07 a.m., Moreau appeared. This time he looked clearer, more frightening. He was getting stronger as the years passed. "You're the one who's going to tell my story, aren't you?" Moreau asked, his voice echoing in Parker's brain. "Yes," Parker replied. "But first I have a question for you. Why every 13th of the month?" Moreau smiled. "Because I died on December 13th, and every 13th of the month I remember the pain of my death. Someone must share my pain." Parker understood. "You just don't want to be alone." "Bingo," Moreau said. "But that was just the beginning. Now I am the soul of this prison. Every death strengthens me. Every soul joins me. Soon," Moreau stopped. "Soon what?" Parker asked. "Soon I'll be able to feed not just on the 13th of the month, but every day. And then," Moreau's eyes turned even redder, "now someone must die." Parker managed to escape that night. But after he wrote his story, newspaper editor Marcus Sterling died mysteriously. He had suffered a heart attack, but on Sterling's desk, there were bloodstains on the story Parker had written, as if someone had pressed their hands onto the paper. Moreau was waiting for him. "New warden," Moreau said. "Time to learn the rules." Hayes was found dead in his cell the next morning. But Hayes' death was different from the others. There were no marks on his body, only a deep expression of fear on his face, as if he had seen something very terrible before dying. Moreau's power was no longer limited to just the electric chair. He could now kill people by frightening them too. The next warden took Reynolds' notes more seriously, but it was too late. After Hayes' death, the prison's electrical system completely changed. It was now under Moreau's control. The cameras gained night vision capability. The microphones could hear even the smallest whisper. Moreau could see everywhere, hear everything. The prison was now his body. Reynolds retired in 1998. The new warden, Robert Hayes, didn't know what to do when he heard the bell sound on his first night. The note Reynolds had left was very clear. Never enter the execution chamber. Never try to stop the bell from ringing. And every 13th of the month, someone must die. Hayes had considered this note nonsense. When the bell rang on the first 13th of the month, he entered the execution chamber. In the early 2000s, strange events began increasing at Ravenshollow Penitentiary. Not just on the 13th of the month, but on other days too, peculiar sounds were heard. Inmates said they heard footsteps in the walls at night. Guards claimed they saw shadows in the corridors. Moreau's soul was no longer limited to just the execution chamber. It was slowly spreading throughout the entire prison. Dr. Reynolds learned of this situation and visited the prison again. What she saw horrified her. The prison walls looked pale, as if life energy had been drained from them. "Moreau is getting stronger," Reynolds said. "He gets stronger with every death. And now he's starting to feed not just on the 13th of the month, but every day." Reynolds was right. The death rate in the prison began to increase. It was recorded as natural death in official records, but the truth was much more frightening. Moreau could now feed whenever he wanted. In 2010, a major incident occurred at the prison. When the bell rang on the 13th of the month, no one died. Moreau couldn't find his victim. That night, the prison's entire electrical system collapsed. The lights went out. The cameras didn't work. The doors opened. Inmates were running in panic through the corridors. But the most frightening thing was that the entire prison began to shake, as if a giant heart had stopped beating. Moreau was angry, very angry. When morning came, all the inmates in the prison's D block were found dead. They had all died of heart attacks. Moreau had chosen to feed all at once. From that day on, No one dared to leave the prison empty on the 13th of the month. Moreau's anger was much more frightening. Now, someone absolutely had to die every 13th of the month. Otherwise, mass deaths occurred. In 2023, Ravenshollow Penitentiary is still open. According to official records, the prison experiences 12 natural deaths per year, all on the 13th of the month. When new guards learn this truth, most quit their jobs, but some stay, because someone has to feed Moreau. The current warden, Jennifer Walsh, wrote this note last month. Moreau's soul is no longer limited to just the electric chair. I feel him everywhere in the prison. In the walls, in the corridors, in the cells. He is now the soul of Ravenshollow. Walsh was right. Moreau had become part of the prison. Even more than that, he was now the master of the prison. It's past midnight tonight. We're approaching 12:07 a.m. At Ravenshollow Penitentiary, guard James Morrison is standing in front of the execution chamber door. He has the key in his hand. It's his shift tonight. Every 13th of the month, a guard does this duty, to wait for Moreau's victim. The bell begins to ring. Morrison inserts the key into the lock. He opens the door. Vincent Moreau is sitting in the electric chair, looking at him. He appears clearer now. He got stronger as the years passed. Someone must die, Moreau says. Morrison nods. I know. But something is different tonight. Morrison is brave. Why me? He asks. Moreau smiles. Because you were chosen. By whom? By the prison? This building is alive, and I am its soul. You are tonight's victim. Morrison understood. The prison really was alive, and Moreau was its soul. The bell stops, but within the walls of Ravenshollow Penitentiary, other sounds begin to be heard. Screams, moans, footsteps. Moreau is no longer alone. Everyone who has died over the years has become his army. Crawford, Brennan, Martinez, Hayes, they're all with Moreau. Ghost guards, ghost inmates, ghost visitors. They are all spirits of the prison. And every 13th of the month, this army wants one more person. Morrison sits in the electric chair. His turn has come. Moreau stands up. The other ghosts also appear. The entire execution chamber is filled with ghosts. Welcome, Moreau says. You will now be one of the family. Morrison takes his last breath, and the bell begins to ring again. Because Moreau's hunger never ends, each feeding makes him stronger. And soon, he will start feeding not just on the 13th of the month, but every day. If you ever enter through the doors of Ravenshollow Penitentiary, watch your clock. If it's the 13th of the month and midnight is approaching, run. Because once the bell rings, Moreau sees you, and then someone must die. But not just on the 13th of the month anymore. Moreau gets stronger every day, and soon the bell will ring every night.